Good evening, traders. This is CloudChartist with your weekly Ichimoku wrap-up for the week ending January 29th. This is Sunday night, the 31st. Still a little bit of January left. I'm going to start off with the ES. ES put in a very bullish reversal after putting in this potential reversal hammer last week. I suggested last week in last week's video that we needed a higher high and a higher low to confirm the reversal on the weekly time frame for the ES, and indeed we got the weekly reversal confirmation with the hammer candle that we put in last week, putting in a higher high and a higher low. My cursor is, okay, there we go, frozen. Here's the higher high and a higher low. Also a similar candle to last week, a bullish hammer type candle, and we closed very close to the high last week, so there's nothing to suggest that the reversal won't continue. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see a gap up after Friday's very bullish price action on shorter time frames. The ES looks quite bullish still. If we do move higher, we do have resistance at this flat Tenkan Sen above, which is currently located at 1954.63, so do be on the lookout. If we do continue to see buyers coming in for the ES, do be cautious of that level. Weekly levels are strong, are important to be aware of. In fact, they're stronger than shorter time frame levels. So we have the Tenkan Sen at 1954.63, then we have the Kijun Sen just slightly above that at 1957.25. If we do manage to move through those levels, we have the bottom of the cloud, which I'm estimating to be at approximately, let's call it 173.25. If we do manage to trade over 173.25, the analysis for and the bias for ES on the weekly time frame becomes neutral, because anytime price action moves into the cloud, price action becomes neutral. We have a very thick cloud, so price action would, if we continued moving higher, price action would be neutral until we were able to break out of the cloud. Next week, we have a higher cloud top than the prior week, and that high top will continue for the next week as well. And then we have this big drop-off, so the cloud becomes much thinner. This is important for a couple of reasons. One reason is that it will be, it'll take longer for the price action to break out of the cloud. It won't break out of the cloud till 2081, over 2081 for the next few weeks. And then the week of the 22nd, price action, if it's over the 1981 level, it will be bullish even though it might be in this area. If we do have price action trading around the cloud in that time, when we get to that time period, the end of February and the beginning of March, we have a very thin cloud support, which means if price action is sort of around the top of the cloud, it's very precarious in that it doesn't have a lot of support, so it could sell through, especially at this cloud twist area, which is the first week in April. And we have another small cloud, and then as we move till the beginning of May, we also continue to have a really thin cloud. So if you're depending on price action on the cloud to act as support during this whole time period until we get back into like June, there's not a lot of cloud support. So we'll see whether price action is above up here or below. If we do end up remaining below the cloud for this time, then it would be easier for price action to break actually up into the cloud in this area than perhaps in the thicker area of the cloud. Pardon me. One other thing to note about this chart is the Chikou, this red line over here representing price action time shifted 26 periods into the past. That will run into resistance at the top of the cloud at 1987, 1988, thereabouts. So that is also going to be resistance. You might not see it as being resistance in the cloud because you don't see any levels here, but when the Chikou runs into resistance, so does current price. And that's about it for the ES. Let's move on. Let's go to crude right now because we know that crude has been driving this market, although the correlation was broken up a little bit at times last week, I noticed. So we see that crude put in a higher high and a higher low, thus beginning an uptrend, first uptrend we've seen in several weeks. We did have and still do have resistance at the Tenkan-sen. Tenkan-sen last week was at 35.09. The high that we put in last week was, 34.82. So we didn't quite hit the Tenkan-sen, but we did find some sellers coming in off the highs. It's possible, because of this upward price momentum, that the Tenkan-sen will go flat when the markets reopen, in which case it will continue to act as resistance, and it will probably be in the same level, approximately 35.09 area. So do watch that level if you're trying to get long crude. If you are thinking that perhaps the bottom is in for crude and it's all up from here, the Tenkan-sen is going to be a very good indicator of that. If we do make it over the Tenkan-sen, then we have the Kijun-sen above offering resistance at 39.24. If we do not, if we're unable to get above the Tenkan-sen, we could see another downtrend, another down move. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Pardon me, the cat is on my keyboard. You couldn't see that, but I picked up my cat and took him off the keyboard. All right, we do have significant bottoming tails in these prior two candles for crude, showing that we did have buying interest coming in off the lows. So that's somewhat bullish. But overall, of course, crude is still bearish in all ways, Ichimoku, as it is under the cloud, under the Kijun-sen, under the Tenkan-sen. The Kijun-sen is bear crossed above the Tenkan-sen. The RSI was oversold, and you see that when it's been oversold in the past, in this light, coming into this light, making a light blue area, that we did get a bounce. So these two last bullish weeks could be just a bounce off oversold, and we're no longer oversold. We're back in positive territory as far as RSI goes. So we don't have that going for us at the moment as far as encouraging a bounce. So let's move along to some other stock indexes. Let's look at the Dow, the YM. YM looks very similar to the ES in that it put in another bullish candle. Closed, I think, actually at the highs, 163.7, just off the highs. The high was 163.76, and we closed at 163.72, so just 4 points off the high on the Dow. If we do move higher, we're going to have resistance at the Kijun-sen at 16.596 and at the Tenkan-sen at 16.635 above. These are both flat, so therefore will attract price. If the Chikou continues moving up, it will come into resistance at the cloud also. So if we do make it over the Kijun-sen and the Tenkan-sen, move into the area between them and the cloud, do keep an eye on where the Chikou is at. If we do move above these levels and the Chikou actually breaks into the cloud, then we'll have our next major resistance at the bottom of the cloud, which you see offered a support here on the 14th and also support and a bounce on the 21st of December. We got this green candle off the bottom of the cloud, and also these candles touch the bottom cloud, so that obviously, and we have these candles over here at this level also. So obviously this 17.050 level is important support and resistance for the Dow moving forward if we do make it over that 16.635 level. Let's move to the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ, unlike the other indexes that we've looked at thus far, is neutral at this point. Price action has closed inside the cloud for the second week in a row. We have another hammer candle with a higher high and a higher low, close on the highs. Not a very big bodied candle here. If we do move higher, we do have the Kijun-sen offering resistance at 43.2388. Then we have the Tenkan-sen above that offering resistance at 43.615. So keep both of those levels in mind if you're watching the NASDAQ, because those should both provide resistance. It's possible we could get the 10% tipping up to represent this upward momentum of price. So we'll see if that happens. And then if we continue to move higher next week, we will have resistance at the top of the cloud at around 44.75. So that could come into play also. The Chikou, you notice, is underneath the candles. So if we do get lots of buying and the Chikou is able to move up, it will run into the Kijun-sen and the Tenkan-sen and these candles up in the 44.50, like around the same level as the cloud level that I just mentioned to you. So do keep an eye on that 44.50 level as well. Let's look at the Russell. Ooh, I have fibs on here. What are these fibs? These fibs were from this swing level here. And it's interesting, we are basically finding resistance at this prior low reversal area. So you can just ignore my fibs for the moment. So we had a confirmed reversal with a higher high and a higher low from last week after putting in this potential reversal candle. It was confirmed, sorry. This 1038.90 level could offer resistance here, as it was an important level before. But if not, if we move over that up to the flat Tenkan-sen above at 1080.90, that's the next resistance, major resistance I see on the weekly. And then we also have resistance at the Kijun-sen above at 1097.70. Then beyond that, we have resistance up here at the cloud at 1164.50 or thereabouts. Let's see, let's go look at some metals. Let's look at gold. Gold continues to be bearish under the cloud. We did make progress by getting over the Tenkan-sen. And unfortunately last week, or unfortunately if you're long gold, we broke over the Kijun-sen and then sold back down to right around the Kijun-sen level. We put in a close at 1118.40. The Kijun-sen's at 1118.60, so we did close just a tiny bit, 20 cents under the Kijun-sen, but that is important because that is like a level of resistance that did hold. So we could see that acting as resistance in the future. If we do break over that level, we have the Chikou coming into the Tenkan-sen up here at around 1139. I was hopeful that for my friends that were long gold last week that they would be able to get out of their trade at around that level during the FOMC nonsense, but then we got the Japan negative interest rate news, which sort of caused some mayhem for the metals prices. But overall, gold is still in an uptrend, a bit of a topping tail, but is still bearish because it's still under the cloud. Let's look at silver. We once again did have some bullish progress for silver, but a very big topping tail as silver was unable to hold this prior area around 1458. Let's see, the high was at 1458.5, was sold heartily, I should add, because we did sell down almost to the, maybe even slightly below the middle of this candle. The fact that we did put in a close over the Tenkan-sen is significant. You see the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen are both flat, and so I expect if we are able to hold above the 1413 Tenkan-sen level that we will be trading in a range perhaps for a while for silver between these two levels. And if we lose the Tenkan-sen, then we could see another leg down for silver. Let's look at some treasuries. Let's look at the 30-year treasury bond. So bonds have been real interesting, despite the last couple of days of bullish progress for The ES bonds continued marching higher, so they are not actually reflecting risk very well at the moment, at least in terms of the ES and the stock market. They may be representing currency risk or other forms of financial risk, people wanting to buy bonds as a safe flight to safety trade. We did put in a topping tail around the same level that we topped at last week, we put in a high of 161.18. Or 2 weeks ago, sorry. Last week we put in a high of 161.27. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this week, whether we can break above that prior level of resistance and move higher back into these prior highs from last year, or if we reverse and trade lower, if we back towards the cloud. We're not currently overbought, so there's no reason to think that we need to reverse based on that at the moment. This chart is fully bullish in Ichimoku terms. The Tenkan Sen and Kijun Sen are almost confluent right now. They're exactly confluent. They're both confluent at 156.19. So if they remain at that level and we do get selling coming in, that will be offering support for the 30-year Treasury bond. So do keep that 156.19 level in mind. Could be different. The Tenkan Sen could pop higher because representing this bullish momentum. So we'll see what that looks like when it opens up. Chikou is free of anything causing it to get hung up, so the Chikou is free, sending the signal that price can go higher. We do have a cloud that you can see the nature of the cloud was quite rising throughout all of last year. We had a rising cloud offering support. At this point, since the end of last year, since really October, we've had a sideways cloud, and we still have a sideways cloud. We have a dip in the cloud right here, but we've been bullish anyway and following the momentum, remaining above the Tenkan Sen and the Kijun Sen here. But the cloud does sort of top out in like the end of March and continues to move sideways and get smaller. When a cloud goes from thicker to smaller, it suggests that price action will trade in a tighter range. Then we do have a cloud twist coming up like at the end of June, so not for a while. So bullish in Ichimoku terms, but watch the cloud. It could represent sideways price action for now rather than necessarily representing a continued up move. But as long as price action holds the Tenkan Sen, then the up move, can be relied upon. All right, looking at the 10-year Treasuries notes, we put in a very bullish candle last week. We did not have a confirmed reversal off this potential reversal candle. We had a lot of sellers coming on this prior candle, but last week we just continued higher in a very bullish way for the 10-year. We are coming up into a prior resistance area. You can see that horizontal wicks in this area that we're at right now. We do have a flat cloud below. We do have a bear crossed Kijun Sen over the Tenkan Sen, but it looks like the Tenkan Sen is coming up and could actually cross over the Kijun Sen for a bull cross relatively soon. If we do find sellers, then we can look for support at the Kijun Sen at 127.205, and then at the Tenkan Sen below that at 127.085, and then at the cloud, which is slightly below that, at 127.11, 127.10, sorry, let's call it. We have a pretty thin cloud, so in the event that we were to get a lot of selling, it's pretty supportive for this week, but as time moves on, it becomes less supportive as it becomes thinner and suggests also a tighter range. We have a little bit of an uptick in the cloud for ZN into the end of March and the beginning of April. Then we have a very flat cloud for a while. So that does not signify, it's not, the cloud is not shaped in the way that you might want it to be if you are looking for a nice continued up move. So just keep that in mind as a caveat. We're not overbought yet on RSI, but we're heading for it. So if we do become overbought, do keep an eye on that as well. We're probably overbought on shorter time frames. Nope, we're not even overbought on shorter time frames. All right, let's go back to the weekly, and let's move on to, let's look at the dollar. The dollar has been maintaining its bullishness, maintaining closing above the Tenkan-sen. We noticed that the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen are flat, moving sideways, suggesting sideways price action. Let's see, last week we put in a high of 99.88, and the prior week we put in a high of 99.95. So we did actually move 3 ticks above last week's high, so we did put in a higher high. And oh, I'm sorry, that's we didn't put in a higher high. That's 99.88 as opposed to 99.95. I didn't think it looked higher. I just had trouble reading the numbers, these little numbers up here. So if we do reverse lower for the dollar, we do have support at that 98.91.3, the Tenkan-sen. And then if we lose a Tenkan-sen on a closing basis on the dollar, I would suggest that we will be in for a range trade between the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen as we move sideways into this sideways cloud. We do have this little cloud dip coming up in April, but that's not for a while. So we'll deal with that when we come to it. But bullish in all ways, Ichimoku for the dollar. Let's look at some grains. Let's look at corn. So boring to look at grains these days because they haven't really been doing much. We put in a bullish hammer with a higher high and a higher low from last week, so we continue the uptrend. We are still holding the Tenkan-sen as support, but overall we're still bearish under the cloud for the corn. If we do move higher, we will have resistance at the Kijun-sen, which is currently at 375.25, so do keep an eye on that level if you're trading it. And then above that, we have resistance for the Chikou at 379.50 or thereabouts, so that it means if the Chikou continues higher, it's going to run into resistance right around that level as well. If we get over that level, then we don't have Ichimoku resistance until 386 bottom of the cloud. So keep that in mind if if we do get some bullish action from corn. We're still overall bearish in all ways Ichimoku, except for this Tenkan-sen support is slightly bullish divergence from that. Let's look at soybeans. Soybeans put in a lower high and a lower low, so this potential reversal candle from last week was indeed confirmed by a lower high and a lower low, so trend is now down for soybeans. The Tenkan-sen is at 880.88, and we closed at 881.50, so we did close slightly above the Tenkan-sen, which is pretty bullish. Overall, we see that soybeans are still bearish in Ichimoku terms, and there's plenty of other horizontal resistance levels between here and the Kijun-sen offering resistance way up there at 920.38. We could note that this is kind of an inverse head and shoulders shaping up here. Could be a bottoming pattern, but we need to see price get back up over, the potential neckline-ish area of this potential pattern that may not be a pattern, back over like 906, 907. Then we can start talking about a bottoming pattern if you want to. Then, all right, let's move on to oats. Oats looking bear flaggish. We do have a flat Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen above, but otherwise looking pretty bear flaggy down here. Excuse me, not able to make a higher high and a higher low, so we still have a downtrend in effect here. And we did close at this prior resistance level where price, or we did resist at this prior, at the open, which was the prior week's close. We were unable to move very much higher after that, and then close down the lower half of the candle, so not very bullish for oats. We can look at some livestock. Let's look at LE, live cattle. Live cattle, we are in an uptrend. We did put in a higher high and a higher low, but we saw sellers and buyers on both ends of this candle. So this is actually a spinning top type candle. Could be a potential reversal lower, which wouldn't be surprising because we are sort of moving back and forth in this range between the Tenkan Sen and the Kijun Sen. The Tenkan Sen at 129.92.5, the Kijun Sen at 135.88. So I expect further range in that area for LE unless we can put in a solid close above the Kijun Sen on the weekly time frame. Let's look at the hogs. Hogs are actually continuing to make bullish progress towards the flat Kijun Sen above. That Kijun Sen was 66.68. So if we do move higher, do keep an eye on that 66.68 level as potentially offering resistance. It offered resistance previously here, and then flipped to being support. So if we do put in a close over that, then that level should act as support. Now, one Ichimoku note, generally in all Ichimoku charting, the Kijun Sen is not as strong as the Tenkan Sen as support. So if you're relying on support of the Kijun Sen, it can be a little bit weaker than if it is the Tenkan Sen. That's just an observation I've made throughout the years. All right, what else do we have? Let's look at coffee. I feel like I haven't looked at that lately. Maybe I went over it last week. Still boring. Not a lot going on with coffee. We did put in a potential reversal candle, and then we did get a confirmed reversal off that last week with a higher high and a higher low, but we did get a lot of sellers coming in off the top, and we were unable to close above the Tenkan Sen at 119.68. So until we do put in a close over that, coffee is still bearish in always Ichimoku. Oh, I didn't do wheat. Let's look at wheat. Wheat continued higher, but found a lot of sellers at the highs, and put in a spinning top type doji with a slightly longer topping tail than bottoming tail. So a lot of indecision in the wheat market here. That we did hold the Tenkan Sen as support, so that's kind of important. The Tenkan Sen is currently at 477.50, which would offer support, and then resistance at the Kijun Sen above there at 493.75. Let's look at a couple stock charts before I go. Let's look at Apple. I ran these fibs on the weekly time frame, which I found to be pretty interesting. These are from the 2013 lows to the 2015 highs. We're trading right around the 50% of this range from 2013 till present time. We have been doing so for a while. I'm going to zoom in so we can concentrate on current price. We came down and traded below this prior support level around 94.20. You see this big green bounce off that prior level. Then we, traded in the cloud and lost the cloud, sold off with the rest of the market. We are currently not in an uptrend as from last week because let's see. The high was 101.53 last week, and the week before was 101.46. So we did put in a higher high, but we also put in a lower low. So we are still in an uptrend, but this is an outside candle. So keep that in mind. That means we can continue being in an uptrend because the outside candle does not change the trend. But we are down here at this prior support level where we have been finding support at this 96.70s area. That's right around where we're hanging out at the moment. We notice the Chicow is inside the cloud, has maintained support inside the cloud, so it will continue to do so for a couple more weeks, but eventually it will be moving sideways so that it will not have support of the cloud anymore no matter what because of just time. unless we get a bounce, and it can move up with the cloud as the contour of the cloud moves up. If we do find more buyers and we got a further move to the upside for Apple, we do have an open body gap here to fill at up to 105.26. And then we have the Tenkan-sen, which is currently at 106.13, so keep an eye on that level as well. The Tenkan-sen might be in a slightly different location when we reopen. We can look at Amazon. Amazon is closed sideways inside this horizontal range, which is delineated by the Kijun-sen on the bottom and the Tenkan-sen on the top. So even though we had a large sell-off from the lows on earnings, we're still inside this range for Amazon. So I'm looking for further sideways motion with resistance at 621.81. Let's look at Facebook, because everybody wants to, except for me. I loathe Facebook. All right, so very bullish breakout. Once we got over the Tenkan-sen here, we put in this hammer candle potential reversal after this downtrend, and then earnings sent Facebook to all new highs. So Facebook is extremely bullish here, but it's heading towards potentially overbought conditions. Not there yet, and we do have this nasty looking cloud below. So in Ichimoku terms, once price gets away from the cloud, it tends to want to revert back towards the cloud like an elastic, sort of like Bollinger Bands. You would have the top Bollinger Band and the bottom Bollinger Band. Price action tends to be drawn towards the medium or whatever. Think of the cloud as the median, and representing mean, the mean. So it gets a little bit sketchy for Facebook into March and April as far as the cloud is concerned, but as long as it continues to hold above the Tenkan-sen, should be good. This was a kind of triangle pattern that failed and broke down to the downside, but then this recent bounce leading up to earnings and then after earnings sent it zooming to the upside. I'm going to look at DB. DB is Deutsche Bank ADR. It's been a very good indicator of risk. And as you can tell, the thing is in the toilet. Very bearish. So not representing very much of a bounce in risk at all as far as the Deutsche Bank indicator is concerned. So that is a word of caution. Let's look at it on the monthly even. So, we made a new monthly low that we haven't seen since 2008 for Deutsche Bank. So very bearish, very much something to be cautious about. And I think I've spoken enough. My throat's getting a little sore, so I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, feel free to give me a thumbs up on YouTube. And if you're interested in learning how to trade using Ichimoku, I do run a chat room where we trade live using these charts and also some other stuff, market profile and regular good old-fashioned TA in my chat room. And if you'd like to check it out, you can check out my website at CloudChartist.com, or you can always contact me via email, cloudchartist@gmail.com, or hit me up on Twitter at CloudChartist. And good luck to everyone. Have a good week, and thanks again for tuning in.